Welcome to week 12, Deepen Your Learning. This is the last one, and we're going to focus specifically on human evolution. So we're going to go from Australopiths all the way through to Homo sapiens. When we look at Australopiths, which are a very early ancestor of humans, they have a few things that make them unique from other primates. One was that they were good at walking upright, which we talked about a bit last week was not very common. Took a while to get to that point because even for the organisms that are comfortable walking upright, they wouldn't be able to do it for very long periods of time. They lived in grassland, so again, it's away from the trees as more distant ancestors would live in that environment. They could use some simple tools, but they weren't very good at running. They couldn't use very precise tools, and they weren't great competitors with other predators. After Australopiths came Homo erectus, and they improved their tool use. We also know that they could throw, so that would be specifically relevant in hunting. And their brain size increased as well. And their brain size is going to affect the way that they're able to think about things and also how they interact with one another. They were hunter-gatherers, and they had a few other things that were unique to them, like they had finer hair, and they also had sweat glands so that they could regulate their temperature when they did things like run. And not all animals have sweat glands. Right? The distinction here between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens is that there's not necessarily a direct ancestry, but they're more like they descended similarly from a common ancestor, though there are some Neanderthal genes in modern day Homo sapiens. So there's these two groups here together, Neanderthals and Denisovans. So they were shorter and stronger. They had a wider chest. They were hunter-gatherers as well. They wore clothing, so that was a big thing that differentiated them from earlier ancestors. They had family groups. They made shelters. They cooked their food, another thing that differentiates them from earlier ancestors. They painted, used jewelry. So we see all these cultural things that start to get introduced at this point. Also, another distinction is they could live in colder climates than Homo sapiens can. Then lastly, we have Homo sapiens. So I like this comparison here so we can see some of those things, but we're slimmer and taller. We're very good at using precise tools. And the biggest thing that differentiates Homo sapiens from anything else in our ancestry is the relative brain size. So our relative brain size is the largest of any organism ever. And so that's going to dramatically affect the things that we're able to think about and do. So there are many, many ways that we can think about things that other organisms cannot. And that's not just our perception of things, that is demonstrable in experimentation. We have extremely fine hair, lots of sweat glands to regulate our temperature. Our skin is pigmented, which is not necessarily something present in organisms that have more hair because they have their hair to protect them from the sun. But for humans, especially ones that live in very sunny climates, having more pigment in their skin is how they can protect themselves from being burned. And we can also store our energy as fat, which is very important if we are potentially going to go without food for a time, which is definitely a possibility. especially in earlier Homo sapiens. Now, again, I know for some of you this might be a really uncomfortable topic to talk about. So you are not required to feel comfortable with it now. What I would hope for you is that seeing this information doesn't make you feel like you have to think a certain way about our ancestry. We know we have been taught about Adam and Eve and the creation, and we know that that is true. We don't know the details surrounding Adam and Eve or any other of the early humans that are discussed in the scriptures. Like I said before, I personally don't perceive this as any indication that we are less than or less special than if we just kind of came out of nowhere. In fact, again, I feel like this shows a deep connection and planning to all of Heavenly Father's other creations. And I'm really grateful for the chance to learn about it. And I think that having these fossils and skeletons and cave drawings and all kinds of information like that is there so that we can learn about who we are and who we were before and think about who we can become. If you have any questions about this topic, feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to talk about it more with you.